Over the years, I've shared a bunch of different photo editing techniques on this channel, and I thought for this video, it'd be fun to combine some of my favorite ones with one image, or in this case, it'll be two images. So we're going to be using techniques like focus stacking and scale adjustment and using AI presets and even applying an Orton effect all in one editing workflow. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And before we jump in, I just want to introduce myself and welcome those of you who are new to this channel. My name is Brian. I help photographers like you get better looking photos using apps like Lightroom and Photoshop and other third-party apps. So let's jump right into Lightroom. So for this video, what I want to do is take this photo here and this photo here and turn it into this photo. And again, we're going to use several techniques like focus stacking, scale adjustment, and even things like the Orton effect and some AI presets to get it dialed in to look exactly the way I want. And we're going to be using Photoshop for the vast majority of this video because things like focus stacking and scale adjustment and even the Orton effect, those are things really that you can't do in Lightroom. You have to use Photoshop. So I'll walk you through it. It's pretty straightforward and it's actually kind of cool. So let's dig in. So I've got these two photos here. Both of them were taken within a second of each other. It's at Abraham Lake in Canada, which is famous for these frozen methane bubbles under the thick ice layer. And so you can see with this photo, the background is in focus. I was focusing on the mountain range and kind of this icy region back here. Now, the reason why I have to take multiple photos and use focus stacking is because really I also want to capture the detail in these ice bubbles here. And you can see if I zoom in on this image, you can see that the foreground is in focus, but here the background is out of focus. And even if we look at the metadata over here, where I took it at f9, even if I took it at f13 or a smaller aperture, I would not get the detail of the background if my plane of focus was so close to the foreground over here, which is why I had to take this photo. And you can see if I kind of toggle back and forth, do you see that distance shift? That's the distance that the lens is traveling to change the plane of focus, which is why focus stacking it's an important thing, but it also will require us to crop in a little bit because there's going to be, you'll see in a second, but there's going to be a little bit of a weird situation on the very outer edge of the frame where there is this shift. So the easiest way to focus stack from Lightroom using Photoshop is to take the images you want. And actually, before I do that, I'm not starting with any edits. I'm not doing anything to the photos aside from one thing. I'm going to take this photo, go to develop, and I'm going to scroll down and apply a profile correction. And you can see it does a nice job of kind of getting rid of that barrel distortion. It knows because it's a raw file, it has the metadata information, it knows which lens I used. And then I'm going to go to this image here and apply the same profile. That's the only thing I'm going to do, not anything else. So it got rid of the barrel distortion and it also got a little bit of the lens vignetting. So now I'm going to highlight both of these photos. I'll right click, then go to edit in. And at the very bottom over here, there is open as layers in Photoshop. And what that's going to do is it's going to take whatever images you have highlighted in Lightroom. It's going to open them in the same active document in Photoshop, and it'll place each of these images on their own layer, which is what we need in order to focus stack. So let's go ahead and do that. And as you can see in Photoshop, here are our two layers. This top layer here is the background, and the bottom layer is the foreground. That's what we want. And to make things easier, I'll double click on the layer title and rename this to background, and then rename the bottom one to foreground, just so I know it's easier to identify what's what. With these two layers here, what we want to do first is focus stack. That's the first technique. And so I'm going to select both of these layers, and then I'm going to go to edit and then auto align layers. What that's going to do is it's going to analyze the qualities of both layers and make sure that they are kind of overlapped as closely as possible. Now you'll see if I zoom in really quickly and I go to the top here, remember I was telling you about how the lens travels a little bit when you're changing the plane of focus? That right here, that's that distance. So we don't want that. You can kind of see it. It creates this border around the entire image. So what I'm going to do is press C for crop. I'm going to make sure that I'm on original ratio. That will just ensure that we retain the aspect ratio of the image. And I'm just going to crop in just a tiny bit from the top and the bottom, just to make sure that we don't have that funky pixel frame going on. And when I'm done, I'll click on the check mark to commit that crop. Now that we have aligned the layers and we've gotten rid of that weird funky outer edge, I'll go ahead and go back to edit and select auto blend layers. And that is going to be the actual focus stacking process, where you don't want to select the panorama blend method. You want to make sure that you have stack images selected. And it's okay to have both of these check boxes selected as well. This is going to take both of the layers, and Photoshop will automatically create a mask, and it'll retain the sharpest pixels in both images. So let's go ahead and click OK there. And now you can see that we have the focus stacked layer that was automatically created. It says background merged. And we have sharp detail in the foreground and the background. And that is focus stacking in a nutshell. Now, there is one thing that I want to do. It might be hard to see here, but the mask, there's certain areas where there's just some weird overlaps, which I want to get rid of. So to do that, I'm going to select this, the merged layer, and I'm going to delete it because I don't need it just yet. Then I'm going to take the mask for the background layer and I'm going to press the # key. And that is going to show me the overlay of the mask. And you can see there's certain areas here where there's just these little weird gaps in the mask. And I want to fill those. To do that, I'm going to press B for the brush, or you can press this icon right here. And then I'm going to make sure that the foreground color is white. To do that, you can either click on this little double arrow, or you can press the X key on your keyboard. And I'm going to paint in here and just make sure that all these areas are painted in and we don't have any lingering weird mask issues. And then I'm going to go ahead, press the # key and select this bottom mask. And same thing, press # key again, except this time I'm going to make sure that black is the foreground color. So I'll press X again, and I'm going to fill in all these little dots here. Now, if you see like a weird little white spot, like right over there, that could be because over here in this mask, I need to go back and fill that in. And so you can see now we have a very clean mask. Everything looks great. And with that, what we need to do now is create our new merged layer, the one that we deleted. To create this merged visible layer or a stamped layer, it's kind of a crazy keyboard shortcut. Some people call it the claw. But the way that you do it is you want to make sure that you have the topmost layer selected that you want to kind of merge below. And then on a Mac, you're going to press the Command, Option, Shift, and then E, and that'll create the layer. So now this layer has the combination of the layers underneath it, and we can hide them, we can delete them, or you can just keep them. On Windows, it's Control, Alt, Shift, E. And so again, it's kind of a funky keyboard shortcut, but it's important because now we have our focus stacked image. All right, so now that we've completed the first technique, which is focus stacking, which has resulted in an image that is sharp from foreground to background, before we move on to the second technique, which is scale adjustment, I'm going to take the spot adjustment brush here, and I'm just going to remove some areas that bother me. And in my opinion, Photoshop's brush, I mean, it's really amazing, especially when compared to Lightroom. I don't know. I just feel like this brush is so much better. It's so much more intuitive. And I'm not going to go too crazy, but I am going to remove kind of areas. What I do is I kind of look away from the image and then I look back. And if there's anything that kind of pops out at me that's overly distracting, that's not meant to kind of be there, or that it bothers me, I remove it. I also see here there's a little bit of a dust spot right there that I want to get rid of. And, you know, that's pretty much it. Again, I could spend a lot more time. Like, I kind of want to get rid of these blades of grass, but I'm not going to bother to do that for this image right now because it would take a long time. So we're going to now move on to our second technique, which is scale adjustment. If we look at this photo, obviously the air bubbles, the frozen bubbles here are important. But this mountain range is also beautiful. It's actually gigantic. But you couldn't really tell that because of the way that I took the photo, in that I used an ultra wide lens. And when you do that, what happens is things in the background, the sense of scale and the sense of compression is reduced. So things that are giant in the background look actually like they're much further away and smaller. And that's a bummer because I really do want this, this mountain range to look larger. So before I show you how to do this, if you're one of those photographers that gets completely incensed with this kind of photo manipulation, then you might want to skip to the next technique in this video. But for this video, I'm going to show you how to use scale adjustment. And you know, it's actually, it sounds more complex than it is. It's actually super, super simple. To do it, I'm going to press M for the marquee tool, and then I'm going to create a selection here of the background, basically this entire thing. So I basically have this little strip of tree line. I've got the mountain range in the background, and I've got the sky. Then I'm going to go to edit, copy, then edit, paste, which places that selection on its own layer here. Then I'm going to go to edit and select free transform, which is Command or Control T. Now I'm going to zoom out because I need to be zoomed out to be able to kind of stretch this out. And I'm going to drag out from the top left corner over here. I'll drag from the top right corner over here. And you can see if we were to position the image here kind of the same way that, in the same position that it was originally, it kind of looks weird, right? Like the mountain range in the center here, it doesn't look balanced. So also, but before we do anything, notice how the point here, the scale, we've increased the scale, or we've adjusted the scale of the mountain range, so it looks a lot bigger. So to kind of finesse the position and the look of the mountain range in the image, let's go and press Command or Control T again, just so that we're in free transform. And I'm going to move the layer over here. Now, what I'm doing is, you see this a little bit of kind of patchiness in the tree line. You can see right below it, it's right there too. So I'm just positioning it around the same place and then dropping it down so it kind of aligns. And then I'm going to make the mountain range a little bit larger, but you can see how I'm positioning it kind of on the left third in the frame, and it looks a lot better. It just looks just more intriguing. The other thing that I want to do is I want to make the mountain range a little bit taller. But if I click and drag from this center point, because we are adjusting with the aspect ratio preserved, it's adjusting the whole thing, which I don't want. If I press and hold the Shift key while clicking on this bumper, you can see how I can make the mountain range taller or more squat. So I'm just going to make it a little bit taller here. And then I'm going to press Enter or Return to commit to free transform. I'll press V to go to the Move tool. And I'm going to bring it down so that we kind of align the foreground and the background again of these two layers. And now if we go here and I turn this layer off, do you see the difference? Do you see how important something like scale adjustment is and what kind of impact it can have on your image? I mean, it looks so much better than this photo because this mountain range, which is really impressive, just looks really small. So that was how we use scale adjustment to kind of manipulate the background. We're adjusting scale so that the mountain range looks, one, it looks larger, but two, it looks closer. The tree line looks closer, and it just, I think, lends itself overall to the image. Now, we have to do one more of those claw keyboard shortcuts because I want to combine the two layers together. So again, with this top layer selected, on Mac, it's Command Option Shift E. On Windows, it's Control Alt Shift E. And we have our new stamped layer. We can call this focus stacked and scaled. And for this one, we can call it focus stacked. And actually, now that I think about it, we can get rid of the focus stack here and we'll just call this scaled. So we kind of can identify what each layer is. Now, before we actually start doing the stylization with the camera raw filter, I want to use the clone stamp tool to fix this little area here. So I'm going to take the clone stamp tool. I'm going to press Option or Alt to select a source area. So I'll click right there. And I'm just going to make a quick brush stroke right there. And, you know, when you look at it, you would never know that there was an issue here. You can also, we can kind of go here and with a smaller brush, close out this area there just to make it nice and clean. I'm kind of a stickler for that, if I'm being honest, almost to the point of being obsessive about it. And now that we've done that, we can go ahead and move on to our third technique, which is the post-processing using AI presets. Before I do that though, before I actually start applying those presets, I want to convert this layer into a smart object just so that I can always go back and make changes later. To do that, you just need to right click on the layer and select Convert to Smart Object. You'll know it's a smart object because of the little icon in the bottom right of the layer thumbnail. And now with that done, I'm going to go to Filter and select Camera Raw Filter. Now, the Camera Raw Filter is basically like Lightroom or Lightroom's Develop module in Photoshop. The first thing I'll do here, I'm going to make this quick. I'm going to press the auto button. I feel like the auto button gets a lot of hate. I don't know why, but it actually does a nice job of bringing you to a better starting place. Not saying that you press the auto button and that's it, you leave it, but it just gets me, as opposed to having to manipulate each of these sliders if I'm in a rush, it gets me to a good starting place. I will drop that white point a little bit and open up the black point. It was a bit too contrasty. And I'm going to add back some of those shadows. Now, I don't want to add any contrast yet or vibrance or saturation because I'm going to be applying a preset. And I don't want to have any of these things applied automatically because it might just overdo the look of the preset. And so to access the presets, I'm just going to click on this button right here. And this is a perfect opportunity just for a few seconds to tell you about presets that I offer on my website. The first is the Landscape AI preset pack that I'm going to show you right now. And this pack contains 30 presets that uses Adobe's AI engine to automatically select the sky or the foreground or a combination of the two and apply really awesome looks in one click. The other preset pack that I want to talk about is my color grade presets. So if you're looking for a very distinct look to apply to your photos, also in a single click, I definitely recommend checking them out. I spent a lot of time building them and I think you'll really enjoy them. I'll leave links to both of the preset packs in the description below. And again, every purchase helps support my small business and it is tremendously appreciated. So thank you very much. All right, let's jump back in. So for this image, I'm just going to go for one of the full scene presets in the Landscape AI preset pack. I'm going to go with the overall enhancer. What this does is it automatically makes a mask for the sky, a mask for the foreground, and it applies individual styles to each area. So I'm going to click it here, but I'm not just going to apply it. I'm going to then take this slider over here, the strength slider or amount slider. I'm going to bring it to 0 and I'll just slowly build it in and kind of stop around maybe like 75%. This looks good. I think it does a really nice job of enhancing the look of the image. And now that I have the preset applied, I can go back to the Develop module here. And I can add things like a little bit of texture and a little bit of clarity, things that don't really get added with the preset. And I can also add a tiny bit more of the dehaze. Not much, because the preset does have some dehaze in the sky mask. And I'm also going to add a tiny bit of vibrance back to the image, because I think it brings out the warm color in the clouds over here, which I think is awesome. So you can see if I hit the backslash key, this is the focus stacked with the scale adjustment image. And then we used AI presets and the Develop module to refine the look. And so with that being done, let's click OK to return back to Photoshop. And you can see, because I made the layer a smart object, if I ever want to go back and adjust any of the settings that I applied, even one of the presets, I can just double click on this Camera Raw filter here, and it'll load the image with all of the adjustments that we made. That is why smart objects are so powerful. So now we have, again, to recap, we've applied 3 different techniques. The first one was focus stacking. The second one was scale adjustment. The third one was using AI presets and the Develop module with Camera Raw to actually stylize the image. The final technique that I want to apply is the Orton Effect. And I have a video covering this. I actually show you how you can do it on the desktop using Photoshop and even on a mobile device. And so I'll put a little card right here to the mobile video. And then at the end of this video, I'll put a card for the desktop version. So you can, if you want to learn more about this. But to do that, all you need to do, and I'm going to kind of go through this pretty quickly because, again, there's a video that goes into more detail. I'm going to right click, go to duplicate layer, and I'm going to call this Orton Effect, and then click OK. So now we have two different layers here with the same effect. If I turn this one off, you see that they're identical. The way that you apply an Orton effect, this is one of the ways, but this is generally the way that I do it. With this duplicate layer selected, I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, and then select Gaussian Blur. And there are different schools of thought, again, about what value you should apply for the radius over here. Again, I cover that in my Orton Effect video. I'm sticking with 43, and I'm going to click OK. Now, okay, this looks terrible. We've basically blurred out the whole photo. But the key here, and why you need to use Photoshop or another application that supports layers with blending modes, is we're going to change the blending mode. We can either use one of the more commonly used ones, which is multiply, or soft light. Now, for this image, I'm going to go with multiply. And again, you can see that right now it looks absolutely terrible, but that's because we are at 100% opacity, which we don't want. In fact, I'm going to bring this to 0, which effectively hides the layer. And I'm going to slowly build in, just like I did with the AI preset. I'm going to bring it into just where the foreground starts to take on a glow. Now, the reason why I selected the multiply layer first is because I want to show you here, if you want to go for a moodier look, where it looks a bit more contrasty and a little punchier and a little darker, multiply is the blending mode that you want to use. However, if you want to go for a little bit of a cheerier look, go to soft light and select that. And you can see here, again, soft light, multiply, and back to soft light. So here I actually like soft light. I'm going to stick with soft light. I'm going to back off a little bit with that opacity. But what the point I want to make is that the Orton effect, it adds a little bit more of it's like a glowy contrast boost. And it just, to me, it's just a really great effect when used tastefully. You could, of course, use a mask if you want to remove the Orton effect from certain areas. But in this case here, I think it's fine. And so with that done, we've now used 4 different techniques to get this image looking a certain way. I'm going to go ahead and go to File and then select Save, which will take this image and bring it back into Lightroom, which we're going to go back to right now. So you can see here in Lightroom, there is the TIFF file, which has our layers preserved. Again, let's go ahead and look at the 2 images that we started with. This is the first focus stacked image with the point of focus in the background. The second image is the same exact photo, but with the point of focus in the foreground. The only thing we did before we started our workflow was we applied a lens correction profile to both images. And then we now have this photo here. And you can see, like, just if we, let me toggle between these 2 photos, you can see how with this photo here, even if we were to apply the post-processing, without that scale adjustment, you can see how it just falls flat. Whereas here, I mean, man, this to me just looks great. Let's see it in full screen view. Again, here and then here. So I don't know, you can call me crazy. I think that these techniques are so important and they can help improve basically the look that you're going for your landscape photos. So again, I hope you found this video helpful and inspirational. I hope it gives you ideas of how you can make improvements to your own post-processing workflow. If you like this video, of course, please hit the thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed, I'd love it if you click on subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified of new videos. Thanks a lot, everyone.